In the history of the UFC women's featherweight division, Matt, there's been 3 champions, there's been 7 fights, and 3 of those 7 fights have included these 2 women. Coming up this weekend, an all-timer in boxing and MMA, we have the 2022 International Boxing Hall of Fame inductee, the preacher's daughter, Holm. She was able to continue with that O on the loss column, beating Ronda Rousey, winning the title, and then soon after getting finished by Miesha Tate. But if you look at it for Holm, it's been an amazing career in the UFC. So many main events, co-main event slots. The only fight that wasn't a main or a co-main or a big-time pay-per-view fight was her fight against Marion Renault that got her the title shot. For Holm, it's been nothing but roses, even with the losses in that column. And she's taking on Foxy, Yana Santos, and I probably shouldn't say that because for Yana Santos...
Tiago might be mad.
This is the first fight for Yana going with the Santos last name. She was engaged to Thiago Santos. They had a kid together, and now it's no longer Kunitskaya. I'd be dead naming. It's Yana Santos. So
good for them.
For Yana, she's coming in after about a 1.5 year layoff, a little bit more than that. She took on Irene Aldana. She got dropped up against the cage, and you talk about busted on the mat. Her nose was disgusting. And Jason Herzog might have been an early stoppage, but not really. Saving a fighter from themselves. She was leaking quite heavily. After that, had the kid. Now she's back. So for Santos, training's out of American Top Team with Thiago, who's going to be making that PFL turn against Rob Wilkinson. I know we talked about it a lot.
I come after you saying Foxy like that.
You think I'm excited about that fight? I've talked about it for like 3 weeks now. But for Yana, a good opportunity to right the ship. And this is a top 10 ranked fight, and it holds a lot of implications for a couple of fighters who haven't fought all that often very often. And when you look at it, for Holm, her last time out, a main event against Ketlen Vieira about this time last year, she controlled the judo specialist and didn't let Vieira have those successes in the judo. And if you do have a look at it, majority of the people out there, MMA decisions, 2 scored at 48-47 Vieira. You had 16 scoring at 48-47 for Holm, and 2 had at 49-46 for Holm. I myself had at 48-47 for Holm. If you look at it for both these women, again, you can play MMA math. I mean, Aldana finished Santos, and Holm beat Aldana. And in the opposite way, Santos beat Vieira, and Vieira beat Holm.
You know what never crossed my mind once when we were thinking of the fight of the nights? Holm versus Yana Santos. Because Holm, for the great highlights, I guess, throughout her game, and she does have great highlights. The 1-2 and the head kick is phenomenal. We know the kicks off the combinations. She has become a lot more of a clinch fighter at this stage of her career, and I know that's a weird thing to say, but it always was a part of her game. You kind of have to go back to pre-Ronda Rousey, but if you watch the Marion Renault fight, and I think it was Raquel Pennington the first time around, yeah, she does use the clinch quite a bit. Like, Holm is jacked. I cannot stress this enough. She is as strong as any woman who has ever gone into the UFC, and she knows how to use that physical strength to her advantage. You might look at 41 and think, oh, she might be slowing down, but when you're way stronger than everybody and now you're 41, it might even the playing field a little bit, but
you're talking about the preacher's daughter, Matt. Oh,
is the preacher 98? How old's the preacher if his daughter's 41?
Just out there at one of those old-timey churches out in the middle of New Mexico.
Everybody talks about Holm and the multiple-time world kickboxing titles and all this stuff. It's great and all, but when you don't really fight like that at this stage of your career, it's not really worth bringing up. Like, I can talk about her boxing. She does have good boxing, but I don't think she's going to go out there and really try to hammer in 1 and 2s with Santos. I really do think, and it might be weird to say this because you might favor Santos in a lot of the grappling exchanges in this fight. I think we're going to see a very similar fight to that Raquel Pennington one the second time around. A lot of Raquel, oddly enough, having success on the outside, kind of throwing the jab out there, making Holly uncomfortable. In the second she did anything that made Holly uncomfortable, Holm would dig 2 underhooks and rush her to the cage and hold her there. And it wasn't the most aesthetically pleasing fight, but it won her the rounds, and it did win her the fight. And you bring up the MMA decisions, like, a lot of people had that fight pretty close, like one way or the other, close for Holm or Vieira. Holm had a lot of her success, and you bring this up against the primary grappler with the clinch in that fight. So I do think we are going to see a lot more of it against Santos. I don't know if we're going to see that Holm from the Ronda Rousey fight that was, 9 years ago now, who would go out there and throw a lot more boxing combinations and mix it in with the head kick. And the thing about Rousey was the tailor-made opponent. She rushes in, she throws a lot of hooks, she doesn't use her range, which is the one thing that makes Holly very unique. So I think there is a pathway for Yana to win if she can get a trip off some of the clinches, but I see her being stuck in that position quite a
Holm
bit.
started her UFC tenure off Pennington, then Renault, then the win over Ronda Rousey. Since then, she's 4-6 and 0-3 in the subsequent title fights. She fought Jermaine Durandamy in a pay-per-view that not a lot of people watched and not a lot of people remember fondly.
She looked okay in the Cyborg fight. I can say that even though I was harsh on her.
Fought Chris Cyborg to a close enough decision, and then she got finished by Amanda Nunes in their fight for the bantamweight title. And out of it, in total, 5 title fights in the UFC, including the loss to Miesha Tate as well. Again, 7 co-mains or main event slots as well. So if you do look at it, for her, a rise into the UFC, undefeated legacy champion, and then she had the wins and the Rousey fight. And then if you look at it for Yana Santos, Yana fought 6-5 Raquel Canoto over with Invicta, and then she fought Chris Cyborg in the main event of UFC 222 for the title. I don't know why I said 222, like it's duh, like I'm speaking French. But when you look at it for Yana, she was the first person to take Chris Cyborg down in a really long time. That was good. And then she got finished in the first round. And for Yana in the UFC, 4-5. We look at some of the wins in the 5-on-in. A win over Marion Renault, so they both have that in common. The loss to Aspen Ladd, where she got finished. She beat Yulia Stoliarenko in one of the weirdest fights you're ever going to see, where Yulia, like a spider monkey trying to jump up to pull her down up against the cage, and Yana just clinches and holds her and lands some decent shots. The fight against Ketlin Vieira, where Vieira tries to initiate the grappling with no striking, whereas... See, I almost did it. Kunitskaya lands some strikes, but not a lot. And then the fight against Irene Aldana, where Aldana's having success from the outside, because this is a one-round fight. Yana does what she does in a lot of her fights, where she reaches for the clinch, like way out, head right there. She gets hit, she gets the clinch, but then she's punished by Aldana, who then drops Yana and then ends up getting the finish once it hits the mat. So for both of these women, they can have success at their desired ranges. It's just going to be telling of who's got the speed advantage in a fight like this to me.
I think we're going to see a lot of pitter-patter from Holly Holm on the outside, and then a lot of immediately rushing in. I don't think we're going to see a lot of that middle range in this fight. That's the one thing. And that's the range where I think Santos can have success. So, you hate to say this for a co-main event, but you got to tell the fans the truth when you want to tell them the truth. I don't know if this is going to be the most aesthetically pleasing fight.
It's the kickboxing, boxing out of Holly Holm. It's the black belt in Taekwondo for Yana Santos. Somebody who at one point, after she had her first child, considered and did retire from MMA for a few years.
The wild thing is, Eddie Hearn's talked about getting Katie Taylor to box Holly Holm. Like, Holly Holm has been in talks to do other things than be a UFC fighter. Now, I'm not saying that's taken all of her focus or anything like that. Those fights didn't come to fruition, but it is interesting that Holly Holm has kind of reached that stage of her career to where it is okay to kind of look outside of the UFC for that kind of stuff.
Fight Cecilia Breakhouse. Everybody wanted that for Chris Cyborg.
50 now, though.
See what happens. Matt, we have a look at the odds. Holly Holm is a pretty big favorite in the matchup. We have a look at the Tapology votes. Surprised us. They are to you. I'm going to say over under 82.5% Holm.
I'm going to say over, but I don't feel good about it.
And it is over. So 779 total votes, 86% Holm, 88% by decision for the 14% out of Santos, 78% by decision. Matt, Holly Holm's last decision win in a 3-round fight was against the gym teacher, Marion Renault.
I will say this, and I'm not saying this to make a joke. Like, training with Thiago Santos is going to make you better. Like, he's super strong, is incredibly technical in most areas of his game, has good jiu-jitsu. Like, that is a real thing. I don't know if it's going to make her throw spinning wheel kicks.
I think training with all the other women at American Top
No, you're right. I don't think Santos is making her worse by any means. But I do have Holm in this fight. I brought it up many times. I don't know if she's going to be able to complete the takedown. And it is odd. When you go back and watch that Ronda Rousey fight, the most surprising part of the whole fight isn't the knockout. Holly Holm gets double underhooks, picks her up, and drops her down. Now, granted, she gets up immediately, but it was wild to see Holly Holm secure a takedown on a fighter like Rousey. Now, I don't think she's going to secure the takedown. I don't even think she's going to try to activate it off of the clinch, but I think the clinch is going to be good enough to at least secure rounds for Holm.
I think like Eminem, around the outside from Holly Holm, around the outside, and Holly Holm to get the decision win in the matchup. Matt, a big-time fight in this one between Yana Santos and Holly Holm in the main event. Marlon Chito Vera taking on Corey Sandhagen. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.